we condition a lot of our people and a lot of our population to not move. And then when people attempt to do so, it can come back to bite them if they go a little bit overboard. You don't need to get creative. You need to be able to do regular stuff consistently, and you'll get amazing results. Because it's a huge compliment. People love being asked for advice. People love to talk about their experiences. That's why we're having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
So we can share experiences. People love to do that.
Welcome to MAMWAA. I'm Gordy, your host, and this is the podcast that includes you into my most famous song lyrics.
He's a middle-aged man with an attitude, and he didn't even have one till he met you.
That's right, I'm the middle-aged man, and my attitude will chatter us through all things that I'm passionate about, from spirituality, the gym and fitness, food, travelling, and music or movies. Quick disclaimer, this list is not exhaustive. So you can get on or you can get off and join us for the episodes that you like the sounds of. Dip in or dip out, as long as you keep dipping. Either way, we've got something to say and we're going in 3, 2... One thing I love about working out at E34 is that it keeps me mobile and limber with the odd creak in the bones now and again. And in this episode, we've got the perfect guest to talk to you guys about your fitness journey, your mobility, with a few I told you so's in there too. He works out regularly. He hosts the motivational podcast named Fueled by Spite, and he's bringing us a positive chat today to move us forward. Dr. James Taylor. Welcome to MAMWAA, James. How are you?
Not bad, man. Thanks for the intro. That was solid.
Thanks. So before we get into it, I believe you've been up to Scotland on my turf.
I have.
Where have you been?
Edinburgh, primarily. And actually, I just booked another set of tickets. I'll be back up there February 10th, I believe, for Scotland, Ireland.
Oh, fab. Is that rugby?
It is.
Yeah. So what did you... Were you in Edinburgh for the rugby, firstly?
Yeah, I was. Oddly enough, the president of the Scotland College of Chiropractic was introduced to me.
Okay.
We hit it off both on chiropractic and rugby, and he invited me over to that side for that side of the ocean to take in a match, and became fast friends. So that's why I'm heading back over there again in 25.
Amazing. What was your favorite parts of Edinburgh?
Man, dude, just coming from America, literally just the history of the city in and of itself, man. Like we don't got cool old stuff like that here, right? We're not that old of a place, all things considered. So literally just being able to walk through the history of the town itself, big old castle aside, even just the cobblestone streets just by themselves were wonderful. I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I enjoy the works, and just to literally see the inspiration, because word on the street is that J.K. got inspiration from Edinburgh for some of the settings in the books. It was just all around the vibe of the town was fantastic.
And from what I can gather, you'd be surprised about how many people stop you in the street in Edinburgh and say, "Can you point me to the castle?" And you could literally just see it from the high street.
It's the big thing in the middle of town.
Well, apparently there's still loads of people who just can't see it for looking at it. But I've only been
grab by the chin and turn it.
Yeah. Have you ever been around the Fringe Festival, or do you know about the Fringe Festival in August?
No, I haven't been there. I was outside of town, stopped up at a place called the Kinross House.
Okay.
And spent a couple nights there. So that's the other real outside of Edinburgh that I've been to. But
well, there's a festival every August from start of the month to the end of the month, and it's an arts festival, and it just takes over Edinburgh. So
that's cool.
you could be in this completely random shop, and then you'll just look around and there will be a performance happening right next to you without you expecting it. Or there's just loads of street performers. There's loads of bars that you can go into, just get free comedy shows. Like, it's definitely worth looking up.
Well, I heard Edinburgh's got a pretty decent comedy festival once a year or something, don't they?
Yeah, that's probably part of the Edinburgh Fringe, and it just takes over the whole city. There's different arts and like performances all over the place.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah, I went for a few years in a row and I performed in a couple of them, and it's just something else. So yeah, it's definitely one to check out. But talking about the Celtic side of it, you've been to Ireland as well.
That's
Yeah,
true.
so I've only been to Dublin. Where did you go?
Mhm. We flew into Dublin. We spent a couple nights there, and then we also spent a couple nights up in Belfast, up in Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Basically, we did a little tour, and I say we, a a small handful of buddies and myself. We all turned 40 last year, so we made a trip over there because it just so happened to coincide with the Rugby World Cup. So we flew over to Dublin. We spent a couple nights there. Went down to Nice in France. Caught a couple matches there. Flew back to Ireland. Went up to Belfast because we all had a mutual friend that lives up there. So I just kind of, again, just popping all over the continent in a sense.
Yeah. So what would you, just for the listeners, if anybody's planning on traveling, which one would you prefer, Belfast or Dublin? Which one would you recommend based on your experience?
Dude, I'd say Belfast personally. I mean, nothing against the Irish themselves, but you cross that imaginary line into Northern Ireland, and I had a good time in Belfast. Um, I don't know if it's just if there's truly a difference between the two, or if it's just places I picked, but I thought the food was better
Okay.
north of that imaginary line.
I think I'm just starting some wars between the listeners right now.
Starting some, there's been a few going on for a couple of centuries,
Well,
maybe a
I
millennia or
heard. I
two.
think I heard. And congratulations on turning 40. It doesn't hurt that much, does it?
No, not so far, man. I think I'm holding together pretty well. It's going a lot better than what my parents did it back in the day.
I missed my I didn't miss my 40th, obviously. I'm still here, but I missed the celebrations because of COVID, and we were in the 4-month lockdown.
Oh,
So I was like locked down at home alone, and my 40th birthday hit slap bang in the center of that, so I couldn't do anything, and I haven't
oh
made up
man.
for it yet. But what did you do nice for your 40th?
Well, I said there's so mine was actually in November, so we went over there prior to the 40th or to my 40th. But oddly enough, I've got like I said, they're a group of friends of ours. So there's four of us in total, and then a couple of us brought our wives. So it was myself and my three friends. We both had birthdays in November. Then there's another one in August. And oddly enough, my wife and I share the same birthday, 5 years apart. So again, we made it over there before our birthdays, but it was we had plenty of fun over there that carried us into November. So for all intents and purposes, when the actual day itself hit, it was pretty anticlimactic. We were still recovering from our trip abroad.
I am genuinely not lying, but me and my partner share the same birthday as well, 10 years apart.
That's awesome.
So that's bizarre. But talking about rugby, then, is that your favorite sport? Do you have any other
Oh,
sport?
easily,
Okay.
easily my favorite, and it's because this is duh. Like if you're aware of at all of the sport, but because it is so international and so worldwide, but it's not worldwide in like baseball's worldwide where a bunch of countries play it, or where football, American Gridiron is trying to become worldwide by sprinkling a couple of games through Europe. Just like literally the community of rugby is so worldwide. It makes it unlike any other sport.
Well, when it comes to me, I tried to get into sports for a majority of my teenage years.
Hmm.
I When I was about 14, I tried to get into football, and I forced myself to watch football on television. I joined basketball teams when I was like 18. I tried watching rugby. I tried playing tennis because my dad was a bowler, and I played green bowls for a while.
Hmm.
There was not a sport that I could get into, and I just couldn't understand what was going on in any of these sports. So much so that I used to go to football matches with my friends, like when I was
Uh-huh.
18, 19, and I would just take the mickey, and I'd just be cheering and screaming and doing whatever to fit in. And they knew I was joking. They didn't think I knew what was going on, but they just found it hilarious. And there was one year that we went to a match in Aberdeen up in the Highlands, and
Hmm.
because that's where we lived. And the most ironic thing about this was we ended up in the newspaper in the stadium cheering the team, and the three of us were stood there like, yeah. And we just found it so funny because out of all the people in that stadium screaming for the
Uh-huh.
team, it was the person that didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, the one that had no
Um,
business really being there.
yeah, I know.
I'm here for the theme.
But that was literally it. I used to go just kind of the social aspect because we always went to the pub afterwards.
Uh-huh.
It was never about the sport, but there's no sport that I actually managed to stay up with or could get into. The only thing that did work for me was in my 30s when I started getting into fitness. Um, so that's kind of when I class my gym as a sport because it's athletics at the end of the day, really.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that brings me to you. You work out 5-6 times a week, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah. And what do you fit into your workouts when you're training?
I keep it varied.
Okay.
I need variety, if you will. I'm not a there's people that will just go out there and nothing against them that will just lift weights. They'll do the 3 or 4 sets of 10 or 12, and they'll do that 5 days a week forever. There are people that just do CrossFit, people that'll just do Pilates or swing kettlebell or something like that. Like myself, I do traditional strength training workout Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Excuse me, and that would be again your 3 sets of 10 in front of a mirror kind of thing,
Yeah.
push day, pull day, and leg day. And then Tuesday, Thursday, I do CrossFit simply just for the variety, and 2, the mobility, and then 3, I don't know if you can tell, I'm not a big cardio guy. um, and then Saturdays, I'll swing kettlebells in the garage again because it's varied, man, and I like to stay mobile. Like I want to be big, but I want to be mobile. It's the same kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
but for all intents and purposes, the whole thing is like, dude, I want to make sure that I am able to play with my kids as long as possible. Like that is my motivation for working out, and I think that's a big reason why I, because like I said, I want to be able to play with them, but I want to be big. So I'll get the bigness, if you will, from the strength training,
Yeah.
but I'll get the mobility from the kettlebells and the CrossFit.
Yeah. That's true. I love a bit of hit as well.
Yep.
Um, for anyone who's listening, if you're not kind of into hit, it's high intensity interval training. So you kind of do like longer bursts of high intense work, like training or whatever the exercise is, and then you have like shorter bursts of rest. Depending on the exercise, you might take longer bursts of rest.
Hmm.
But yeah, I love a bit of hit. So when it
Well,
comes,
no, like I said, I don't like cardio. That type of training tricks you into doing cardio.
yeah,
Like I
that's
am
true.
not gonna do. I might be tricked into a 5K on accident. I definitely won't do a 10K or half. Like I'm not that guy. I'm not doing it. But there was a good programming and a hit training. You could trick me into doing cardio, kind of sneak in a couple 100-meter runs over and over again, and you bookend it with a couple of dumbbells. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I could do that.
Yeah, I see a lot of people using like YouTube videos because there's just so much on YouTube for hit.
Uh huh.
Because or Instagram, even people just get the images they need to do certain lengths of time, set a timer, and off they go. Half an hour they're
Yep.
in and they're out, and you're like, what did he just do? Like, what did they just do? Um,
No,
but
yeah, it's a half an hour there, they're out. There's a puddle of sweat on the ground, and you feel like you did something.
yeah, exactly. Um, I love a bit of spin. I love a spin class. I love my. I
Hmm.
used to be an instructor and a PT, so it was
Okay.
classes that got me into that. Because when I was 30, I'm a massive music fan, so if I listen to music, I get lost in it. And
Fair.
I wasn't used to exercise, and I joined a gym when I was 19. It lasted like 2 days, and never wasted hundreds of pounds because I didn't cancel it. But it was music classes, exercise to music classes that got me into fitness. Because no matter what the instructor was saying to me, I could just listen to music, do it to the beat,
Yep.
and I felt like I was dancing. And before I knew it, an hour had passed, and I'd lost like 600 calories or whatever. But that's like a few years down the line. I was so into it that I became an instructor, and then I went from an instructor to a personal trainer. And it was kind of over the span of 10 years. But I love a good cardio class because
Hmm.
I think that's where my basis lies. Whereas when I'm in the gym, if I don't have headphones in, I don't get as much done. Like, I don't understand how anyone can walk into a gym without music, lift weights without listening to anything, and just train. It just blows my mind. I can't understand
That's
it.
funny because like I'm that guy.
Okay.
Like I don't have headphones on. I walk in. I've got like if I'm going into the the strength training
Yeah.
workout, like it is. I've got my app open with the exercise I'm gonna do, and that's it. Like I got no headphones. I got no music other than maybe the ambient stuff that's going on in the gym. And oddly enough, I find it easier to work out like that because if it's away from me, the noise of the other people and the noise, the music in the gym, like that's easier for me to block out than opposed to if something's like right in my ears, then
Yeah.
I might get accidentally lost in the music and not do the workout. So that's an interesting perspective. Like I can't have stuff in my
So
ears. It's crazy.
what drives you to get through your workout then? If you don't have what do you focus on?
Oh, dude, the fact that I need to get it over with, the fact that I put in the energy and the work to show up, and okay, I'm here. Here's what I'm supposed to do. Whatever this app says, I'm gonna do these things, and like I almost kind of treat it. This is probably isn't like the best way to work out if you want to like get big. Like I said, was kind of my goal. But it's here's my sets. I'm gonna do them. I'm gonna rest 90 seconds. I'm gonna do it again. Rest 90 seconds. I'm gonna see. Basically, I want to get from like the place where the weights are. I want to get from there into the sauna at the end, which is my reward, as quickly as possible.
So do you time your rests or do you just wait and
I about depending like if it's a push day or a pull day, like an upper body thing, then it'll be about 90 seconds between sets, and then maybe about 2 minutes between various lifts. If it's a leg day, then we might be doing 2 minutes between sets and about 4 minutes between lifts.
because again, because I'm such a big music fan, I know how music's structured. So I know that if I do a chorus, I've done 30 to 40 seconds.
Uh
Like,
huh.
and then in between the chorus, you've got a 30 to 45-second gap.
Okay.
So I do it to the amount of time I've got in the track rather than how many reps I'm doing. And that's what I base my weight on. There's a really different perspective of training,
Dude,
isn't it?
that's so funny because they're like, if I'm on the rare occasion that I'm like, okay, I should probably get a run in, then I'll put headphones on because in my head, an average song lasts about 3 minutes. So it's like I'm gonna run for one song, I'll walk for one song, I'll run for one song. Because like I said, then it's in here, then I can't ignore it,
Yeah.
which means I can ignore how physically tired I am and how much running sucks.
Yeah. So what drives you when you're doing something like CrossFit then? Because CrossFit's
Oh,
a
then
bit
it's just straight competition. I
erratic.
just want to beat the
Yeah.
guy next to me. Yeah, I just want to beat the guy next to me. That's what it comes down to. And then I'll even, like I said, CrossFit and hit training, it'll trick you into doing cardio.
Okay.
So in those instances where like there's longer distances or something, or just in my mind excessive cardio within the prescribed workout, then I'll cut myself some slack and I'll be like, I didn't run as fast as that guy, but I lifted more weight than him. So in my mind, I put more value in the weightlifting, so I won the workout. Yeah, he finished before me because he was faster on his 2 feet, but I lifted more weight, so I'm going to call it a win just to make myself feel good.
I've seen CrossFit gets a bit of a bad rep online.
Yeah, that's understandable. CrossFit
Where
gets a
does that
bad
come
rap
from?
online because
I've never done it.
they have shitty coaches.
Okay.
I'm sorry, they have crappy coaches.
So, I mean, what is it? What's that all about though? Because I don't know where it started. Like,
In my head, like I'm not a certified coach. I've never owned a gym, but in my head, the two places there are only two really that CrossFit gets a bad rap from, and it came from all the way back when the thing first kind of started to go parabolic, because two things happened. One, when the business model itself went like this and started to go up, they let damn near anyone become a coach, and even those who didn't started opening up CrossFit gyms and saying we do CrossFit type workouts, basically trying to get around paying to use the word CrossFit, but they weren't actually experienced coaches.
mhm.
So if you have a crappy leader, you're going to have a crappy product. So those individual like affiliates or even the non-affiliate gyms doing the CrossFit thing, those crappy coaches allowed people, through their own ignorance, to hurt themselves working out. The second thing I think that kind of screwed it was people trying to be almost too creative and coming up with physiologically or biomechanically bad workouts. Like, hey, we're gonna just an example. We're gonna do a yoke carry. We're gonna a barbell on your back, if you will, but we're only gonna load one side of the barbell because it makes it more difficult, right? But if you're doing like a competition and you want to be different and you want to be creative, you'll do things like that on paper might kind of seem like a novel idea, but in practice is an extremely huge liability. So,
Yeah.
like, I literally think that's where CrossFit gets its bad rap from the people that are trying to do too much without the required level of knowledge to be able to do it, or just know that probably you should do those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's really bad for your alignment as well when you get
Yeah,
creative. Like,
yeah, right.
exercise should not be creative. I'll just put that out there. Do not get creative when it comes to exercise. Do what works, and it works for a reason.
No kidding. Like it's been around forever. Like Arnold got steroids aside, Arnold got jacked just doing 3 sets of 10 and 3 sets of 12. That'll still work today.
Yeah.
Same thing worked for Ronnie Coleman, all these guys. Like, you don't need to get creative. You need to be able to do regular stuff consistently,
Yeah.
and you'll get amazing results.
And it's the same with everything. Everything comes from a basis of exercise. If you haven't started on the basis, don't even try and develop it.
Right?
You just don't. Rule number one of developing anything, like, I've never done a kettlebell workout. There is a lot that you can just do a kettlebell workout start to finish. I've used kettlebells as part of a workout, but I've never done a kettlebell workout. What do you do a full kettlebell workout?
Dude, I think kettlebells are fun simply because like you can get an extreme like physiologically and cardiovascularly sound workout in a very small amount of time. And again, you don't even really have to do a whole lot per se. Like if you go, there's one day I was like, hey, I'm gonna go see how long it takes me to swing this thing 1,000 times. I'm just gonna see how long it takes. And if memory serves, it took me about 42 minutes to swing it 1,000 times. It was a 53-pound kettlebell, and oddly enough, the calluses have just healed. I busted my hand open, but again, I swung it for like 30 seconds, and then I rested for 30 seconds. And I think that, don't quote me on these numbers. If someone checks my math, they'll be like, "There's no way it was 42 minutes." It was definitely 42 minutes, but I want to say I swung it for 30 seconds and rested for 30 seconds. And on average, I averaged between 20 and 30 swings in that time, I believe. And I was an absolute puddle of sweat. And all I did was just swung a bell up and down.
Yeah.
So you don't need to do a whole lot of work. You don't need to do 1,000. You do 500, and you'll get a good workout going in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, I love getting kettlebell into my workout. And similar like things like I can't even say the word, calisthenics.
Yep.
Because it's basically it's just all body weight, and you can just get lost in. Again, it's all about music for me. Like, get lost in the music and just do everything body weight, and just do as many as possible. For example, length of a track, and just see how many I can get done. It's just a good way to get to burnout and then change exercise.
Yep.
So very often I do like a 30-minute get in, get out. Like, I need at least an hour when I do a workout, just so that I'm not rushing. I hate rushing. When it comes to kettlebells, it's good to know what you're about to do, because it can put you out of alignment if you're not using both hands sometimes.
Oh yeah, that weight swinging around can can correct you in a hurry.
Yeah. But that brings me around to you being a chiropractor by trade.
Yep.
And then I'm going to kind of tell you my chiropractic journey before we get started, because it's quite funny in a worrying kind of way. But basically, with me being an instructor, like I mentioned earlier, there was a period of time when I was doing like 15 classes a week on top of PTing, and I was working full time as well on beneath all this with a job. And I would be sitting watching TV, and when I stood to get out from TV, my legs wouldn't work, and I'd just hit the deck. And it felt like there was a
Kind
nerve.
of a red flag.
Yeah, there was like a nerve in my back. It felt like something was pressing on a nerve, and I was like, "That's not good." And my partner at the time just kept laughing at me, and I was like, "This is actually quite serious." I could stand back up; it was fine, but every time I sat and went from sitting to standing, my back would just crumble, and it wouldn't. My hips wouldn't work. So I went to a chiropractor, and it turns out that I had not brittle bones, but I had deterioration in the coccyx area.
Yep.
And I went to a chiropractor for about 3 years because I needed realignment and I had to keep it moving. And I thought that was quite strange because I was an instructor and my mobility wasn't as good as I thought it should have been as an instructor. What are the most common injuries that as a chiropractor you see?
I mean, here in America, it's a lot of neck pain, back pain, and headaches. And it's not from working out. It's I don't. We spent a good chunk of time here talking about working out and talking about hell, even the ability to get injured working out. That is a small minority of the patients that walk through my door. And I would venture to guess, unless you're specializing in that kind of stuff, that's a small minority of patients, nationwide here. The largest portion of people that I see are going to fall under neck pain, back pain, and headaches from a sedentary lifestyle that they try to, let's say, quickly or abruptly end, i.e., someone who's not used to moving and then tries to move more than their body is prepared for, whether it be, you know, playing with their kids or doing an excessive amount of yard work or something like that, doing something that their body isn't necessarily conditioned to do. Because again, just speaking for the American workforce, we condition a lot of our people and a lot of our population to not move. And then when people attempt to do so, it can come back to bite them if they go a little bit overboard.
Yeah. So talking about things like yard work, what, let's say everyday, I'm going to say, I hate using this word, but everyday people who
Hmm.
can be quite sedentary and they go to work and they go home and that's very minimal, anything else. What should we be doing as those types of people these days to support our back better?
Dude, it's not even a matter of necessarily supporting your back. Like I understand your question, but and maybe it's just when I hear support, I hear like what's I get asked this all the time. What stretches should I do, or should I wear a brace or something like that? And generally speaking, you don't have to stretch. You've got to move. You got to go out and do stuff, right? You don't need a brace. You just need to move. Like it's not sitting there and holding a stretch, holding one of these kind of things. This whole, this skin covered meat sack, if you will, that we call a body, was designed to move. And if we spend I mean, I don't know what the standard work week is over there, but in America, on paper, it's 40 hours. And then, we spend another hour or two in a car. Some people put in overtime. So let's say if we're just on paper, 40 hours a week doing this, your body gets used to whatever you do most often, right? And if you get used to sitting like this for 40 hours a week, but then you need to do something where you're open and up like that, that's going to take a toll on you. So it's basically just, what can we do to support it? Move more. And then you're like, well, I'm chained to the desk. I've got to get my TPS reports done or whatever.
Yeah.
Get yourself a standing desk. Or one of the things I tell patients around here is just set an alarm on your phone for 50 minutes. So for at least 10 minutes out of the hour, you get an alarm that goes off that tells you to get up and go move around and do something. Because again, movement is a habit. Posture is a habit. Good posture is a good habit. Bad posture is a bad habit. But it's literally just a habit. You can train your body to do anything.
Yeah.
It's really easy to train it to do this. It's a little harder to train it to do this.
Yeah. I think something that stuck with me when I was doing my instructor training was the abdominal muscles supporting. And
Uh-huh.
this is probably why I phrased my question the way I phrased it, um, because I mean, for anyone who's listening, there's 5 abdominal muscles, and a lot of people think it's just front abs rather than any muscles in the back. Um, but it works as a cylinder around the spine, the base of the
True.
spine, and that's probably why I worded that question in that way.
Okay.
Because I'm very conscious of that since having to go to the chiropractor for such a long time.
Mhm.
That I'm like, as long as I can do my all-round ab work into the back, the front, the sides, then I know I'm probably not going to feel that pain or have that nerve problem as much as possible. Um,
True.
but going back to something you said earlier about I want to live as long as possible in this life, and that's why I go to the gym and work out. And I
Mhm.
also want to be mobile as long as I can, which I thought was really good for us to be covering this today, as you being a chiropractor, because a lot of people when they get to a certain age, and I know that I'm 44, so I'm not too far away from you, or you're not too far away from me now. But even as a 44-year-old, I know a lot of people my age who struggle to walk, never mind go to the gym. Um,
Yep.
and I say I know, I've seen, I've met, like, not everyone I know can't walk. But yeah, and I think it highlights a lot to me about when I look around at people my age, and that's my point of reference when I'm kind of, what do I have to do to look after myself? What do I have to do to,
Mhm.
and I use what you've just kind of, what's the word? It's not the focal point, but I use the stretching quite a lot because without it, my range of movement, even not even mobility,
Mhm.
my range of movement goes off, um,
Yep.
and that's probably what a lot of people hear. That's an everyday saying, isn't it? I need to stretch more. I need to do that. Like it's not about what they're doing for their mobility. As a chiropractor, then, what do you think we could do differently as somebody who's uneducated about helping our mobility and our back? What don't we know,
Again, I mean,
basically? What don't we know?
we know everything.
Everyone
We
does.
do. We do. We all know the right stuff to do. The crappy part about it is the right thing to do takes effort and energy. And there is so much stuff out there right now that get us to just to be sedentary, to be, you know, anti-mobile. Like we've got this thing here. This thing is going to keep you out of shape, and this thing here is going to put you in your grave sooner rather than later. This thing here is going to cost you more money in the long run. This thing here is going to stop you from getting a promotion at your job. This thing is going to stop you from reaching your goals. This thing is going to make you a crappy parent. This thing right here. So the sooner you can put that down, the better, like literally, the better everything is going to be. Because all that is a distraction. It's a thing that distracts you and stops you from getting off the couch. That thing will make you sit on your couch for 15 more minutes than when you're like, oh, I should have gone to the gym. Oh, well, I was going to go at 9 o'clock and I've been doom scrolling and now it's 9:12 and I didn't start right on time. So, oh, we'll try again tomorrow. So that 15 minutes of doom scrolling cost me another day. And it's that same thing, whether it be eating healthy. Oh, I was going to start dinner, but I got stuck scrolling. And now it's too late for me to start to cook anything. So I'll just order it.
Yeah, it's true. Like, do you know what you said earlier about posture? Like, that's the first thing. Is always in it. It's literally. It isn't even like looking at your monitor. This is a proper
Yep.
almost 90-degree switch, and you see it with people walking down the street. I'm surprised they don't walk into. Well, they do walk into stuff. I've seen it, but
Uh-huh.
like it's absolutely bonkers that there's no awareness these days of surroundings. Um,
Well, not only no awareness, but then there's no experience.
mm,
They're missing out on the experience. And a quick little story, and I part of this is, it's not meant to be a hey look at me kind of thing, but it also at the same time is meant to be a hey look at me kind of thing. My kids, they think there's something special about airplane Wi-Fi that allows our phones to play movies. because our phones don't play movies anywhere except when we're on an airplane. That's the only place it works. And I'm like, no, it's my kids are 6 and 7. They're like, we're on an airplane. Dad, can you see if your phone plays a movie? Oh, it works! Hooray! So we had to go fly across the country. I'm in Texas right now. We had to fly up to Minnesota and drive over to Wisconsin. If we're making that drive, that is, it's like I want to say it's 1,000 miles, give or take, from here to Minnesota. So we made that flight, and then we had to make a 2-hour drive into Wisconsin. On the flight up to Minneapolis, Minnesota, we had airplane Wi-Fi. So the kids watched a movie. We landed in Minnesota. We went to the rental car place. We got a rental car. We hopped in the car and we drove through the country. We had a 2.5-hour drive ahead of us. Not once did our kids ask 6 and 7 to watch a movie. They didn't have any screens. They don't have tablets. The reason they didn't ask is because they didn't think it would work anyway. So it was pointless. And they did what you and I did when we were kids and we drove through the country. They looked out the damn window. They talked about the cows and the stars and how much, what do you think that semi is carrying? What's on that train? Not once. And I was amazed because I realized I had never taken a road trip with my kids that long yet. We maybe like an hour or something, but just from town to town. But for 2.5 hours, they looked out the window in the year of 2004 and did not ask to look at mom and dad's cell phone. It was awesome.
And I think, well, I seen, like last week, I said to my partner, we went for coffee, and there were 2 elderly people in the coffee shop. And I was taken aback because it's the first time I've seen it, but they were both.
And
I was like, that's the first time I've seen that age group so sucked in to mobile phones. And I was like, that's shocking. I've not seen it that extreme. And like, they were like, for 10 minutes, they weren't even talking to each other. And I was like, wow. First time I've seen that age group who's been
that sucks, dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, it says a lot about how society is becoming when it's hit that age group as well. But then what you were saying about people not wanting to do certain things, and that's, again, I had this conversation in an episode almost a year ago now, but not everyone wants to always be doing something else, and that's fine. But I want to kind of talk about your podcast because it's called Fueled by Spite, and not letting other people stop you from doing stuff and keeping your motivation up and not being held back in any way. So firstly, what prompted your podcast subject?
I don't know if you picked up on this, but competition is a big part of how I navigate, this life on this earth here. So yeah, I like to win at the things that I do. And part of winning is finding people who are actually doing better than you and trying to catch them and trying to beat them, or just putting it out there that, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And then somebody's like, there's going to be detractors in everything you do. Why would you want to do that? Why are you starting your own business? Why are you going to chiropractic school? Well, because I want to. Well, that's a stupid idea. Well, now I want to do it not only because I wanted to, but to show you that it's not a stupid idea, that I'm going to prove you wrong. So.
No, that's great, because it's funny that you say that, because I was thinking about a game when I was a kid called The Game of Life. And I was genuinely thinking, back to mobile phones. This week, I downloaded a game for some bizarre reason. There was an ad, and I was thinking, I've been playing life like a game for quite a few years now, whereby if I want something, I just need to figure out what the rules are to get it. And if I don't know how to do something, ask somebody who's already doing it. And if I need something, just ask for it. Just ask somebody if they can help me get it. And it's bizarre how much that turns your life around. Because
not only that, I think people, if they take that advice, and they absolutely should, people will be amazed at how ready other people are to help them.
I agree.
I talk about Fueled by Spite came as something to throw in the face of, detractors and things like that. But at the same time, like you said, the other part that, that fuels that spite, if you will, is I find somebody who's doing better than I am, and I want to achieve what they have or even overtake them. Go ask that person. Like, generally speaking, in my experience, people who are more successful than you will gladly tell you how to do it, how they got where they are. Because it's a huge compliment. People love being asked for advice. People love to talk about their experiences. That's why we're having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
So we can share experiences. People love to do that. And if you go up to somebody and be like, hey, you've done something that I think is great, and I want to do that same thing, that's a huge compliment. And there's a really good chance they'll tell you exactly how they got there and how they screwed up along the way, so you don't have to do that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I went through years of self-sabotage and years of doing all the wrong things before I was like, hold on, my life sucks. Like, I like what I've got at this moment, but I don't like how I don't like my life. What do I have to do to turn myself around? And going to the naysayers point, everyone's like, why do you want to do that? You don't need that. You don't have to do that. Why can't you just be happy with what you've got?
Yeah.
Why can't you just be happy? Why do you have to? And now I'm very much aware that when we change, it upsets other people's reality as well. It's not just our reality that it upsets. It upsets their comfort in having us in their life. Like, we make them uncomfortable. And I mean, just an example, I'll throw this in there, but when I stopped smoking, I've read a lot of self-development books to help me overcome all these issues in the last 20 odd years. But when I stopped smoking, there was a chapter in this self-development book to stop smoking, and it said, no matter what you do, somebody will stand in front of you and hold a cigarette and say, go on, you will start again anyway. The minute that happened, I was like, how did the book know that was going to happen? How did they know that was going to happen? And it stuck with me, because it's like, when somebody tells you they want you to fail, they don't know they want you to fail. It's instilled in all of us that people always give up, because a majority of us do. And that's not new. That's not news to anyone. At some point, we all give up at something, unfortunately. But we're so used to that as a society that when people do it, it's just so natural to say, oh, yeah, you're right. It's fine. Screw it all. But it's true. It's like, this is part of the reason.
There's something real damaging about comfort. Damaging about comfort.
Yeah. And then what are some of the most profound deep dives you've had on your podcast, talking about like what these challenges are that we're going on about?
Yeah, I said some of the best episodes are the people who I've interviewed who talked about breaking out of that comfort zone. The most viewed reel that I've ever put out is just about this guy. He owns a company here just outside of Dallas, Texas, called Big Beard Plumbing, and it's a minute, little snippet of our interview of him talking about the day he quit his job and decided to go out on his own. And that's been, that thing's got damn near 1 million views. I know for some of your viewers, maybe 1 million is not a lot. For some, it's astronomical. But again, it's just due to the beard, Lyle Miller, talking about how one day he's like, you know what, I cleaned out my work truck, and I decided, I've given them enough of my time. I'm going to go out on my own, and that thing went nuts. That, so that's the most popular one. My personal favorite, I'm interviewing an MMA fighter who oddly, he just retired. His goal was 40 fights before he was 40. He just retired with 33 fights because he's got so much other stuff going on. He's a gym owner and a coach, and he trains our police force on, MMA and ground tactics. But in his interview, I asked him, like, what gets you to go back in the cage? Like, the guy's been in the cage 33 times, and that's sanctioned fights. That's not including all the punches he's taken in sparring rounds and stuff. And he goes, at this point in time, it's just evidence. What do you mean evidence? He goes, I've got enough evidence that I can do this. The first time I didn't have a whole lot, but I still did it, which made the second time easier. The second time made the third time easier. The third time made the fourth time easier. All I've done is spent a lifetime building evidence that I can do this. And I was like, it was amazing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for if you aim for 40, for example, you will at least get to 5.
Yep.
Like,
Yep, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. You aim for 40, you'll probably get 5.
yeah, and that's as a minimum. Like, you'll at least get 20% of anything that you aim for. So
Yep.
you aim for 1, you probably won't do it. Because you'll say, oh, it's only 1, it doesn't mean anything. That's a mentality that we've got as a society. I don't even know who to blame for that. It's just the way we all are now. But yeah, it's like having the goal in the first place is the step, I think. I know for me, once I've focused on what the goal is, I can figure out the first steps. I just need to know what the end goal needs to look like and then break it down. Yeah. So what about the skepticism then? So what would be your top tips from all the interviews that you've done in your podcast to overcome the even your own experience then, the skepticism that we get from people? How do we overcome it?
The best. I'm going to give you just one tip, and it's the hardest. It might be the hardest thing to do, but it's the thing that's going to propel you the most. Is you cut those people out. Like it's obviously it's kind of a meme. Like you don't need that kind of negativity in your life, but it is, man. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life. Some people were meant to be a chapter in your story, not your whole story. And man, if they're not helping you and propelling you toward where you want to go, you don't need them. Like that's really what it comes down to. There's on this journey forward that I've been going through, there's plenty of people that were on at the start that aren't here now. Mm-hmm. Some of that was their decision, but there's a good chunk of that was my decision. Like if you're not serving me and you're not allowing me to serve you, then there's no reason for this partnership to continue.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. In my mind, there's no other way around it. There's no other, tips and tricks and half truths. If you want to go forward and you those people that are skeptics, cut them.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that, because it's not necessarily just the skepticism, but everything needs to be 50-50. Like if you're with me, come with me. Don't be half in, half out. Like be there to support me. And if you're not willing to support me, then I'll leave you behind. Like I'll dip into you when you need me, not the other way around.
Yep.
If that makes sense. I've kind of over 20 years now, but over 20 years since realizing all of this, I've got such a small circle of friends or acquaintances, because I don't spend that much time with people. I just kind of dip in and dip out when people need me or I need them, and it's a healthy balance. And I don't know, I'm a 100% completely different person I was 20 years ago. And sometimes when I look back, I just go, who is that person I left behind?
Yeah.
Who is that guy because the life that guy had, I don't recognize that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's bonkers, absolutely bonkers. But I mean, that's just for anyone listening, just to put that into perspective. That's like lifestyle change. That was a career completely moved forward. Health, I was a 16 and a half stone person who didn't do anything. Like I had addictions that you just wouldn't believe if I explained it to you. Like I was a completely different person. and I mean, I've got a book and stuff that everyone here knows about, but when I talk about that on other people's podcasts, I'm like, this was my end goal 20 years down the line. This was my end goal now. Like, what was yours? Like, when did this all kick off for you? All these changes and motivations.
And oddly enough, so again, I can only speaking from the experience of an American business person. Over here, we've got an ample amount of coaches and gurus for whatever you want or a coach or a guru for, specifically in the realm of business. So when I graduate from chiropractic school, I'm going to go out, I'm going to start my own. Coaches abound. I'll help you start your practice. I'll help you grow to $1 million. I'll help you see 1,000 people a week, blah, 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 blah. So I grab onto one because, again, like I went to school to be a chiropractor. I didn't go to school to be a businessman. My minors or my undergrads in biology and chemistry and kinesiology, some hard sciences, and then I got a doctorate in chiropractic, more science, zero business. So I get this guy to help me start a business, and he does a great job. And I have a top 5% purely chiropractic office in DFW. Dare I say the nation, because I hold myself in extremely high regard. I'm really good at this. But then, like, it came to the realization that, dude, I don't want to die pushing on backs. But what I do want to do is I want to, like, after I achieved this level here, like, how do I teach other people to do this? And then when I started to reach out, like, hey, like, I'm pretty good at this. I think I should help other people do this thing too, because chiropractors in America, they kind of struggle. Like they've got this, thing in their head, like, I'm a doctor, so I should make lots of money and be treated with respect, but I'm not. Well, a lot of people aren't, whether it's chiropractors or dentists or MDs, simply because they haven't earned it. So how do I teach people to actually do that, build confidence in themselves, and then, like, not have to, build a life for themselves, build a legacy? And when I reached out looking for people to help me do that, like, those were few and farther between. So it's like, damn, there are a whole lot of people here who are willing to help me start a business and willing to take a cut off the top for their knowledge and stuff like that. But if I want to help people actually do that also, then all of a sudden, like, nobody is all around to help. And I thought that was really weird, that there are plenty of people who will prey on you when you're, naive. But then all of a sudden we're like, hey, like, actually, I want to help people. There's not a whole lot of people out there who will teach you how to help people. I just thought that was really weird.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So for you then, like, do you know how I mentioned, like, I decide on what the goal is, then I break it down? Like,
Yep.
What's yours for realizing the potential you've got? So I can tell you're so aware of what your potential is now that you're where you are, but how did you highlight that?
Like, I want this, in all honesty, this comes from a bit of a selfish and or narcissistic place. I want people to thank me for the work that I've done and for the life that I've taught them to live. Now, again, that sounds incredibly selfish and narcissistic, and I'm okay with that, because the outcome for that person is going to be awesome. Like, I live a pretty solid life. Like, I like the life that I have. I have a wife and 2 awesome kids and a great house, and I got no, again, come from America, I got no student loan debt. I paid all that off. I got no car debt. I paid all that off. I own the building that I'm in. Like, I'm doing pretty well for myself. And I want to teach other people how to do that also. Because, again, from a chiropractic standpoint, here in America, there's a lot of them out there that are struggling.
Yeah.
So how can I teach people to get what I have? And then in so doing, they'll be like, hey, Joe Chiropractor, you live a pretty solid life. How'd you do that? Oh, Dr. Taylor taught me how. Hey, Jennifer Chiropractor, that looks pretty cool. How'd you do that? Oh, Dr. Taylor taught me to do that. Like, again, it comes from a selfish place. But in the grand scheme of things, like, the overarching reach is fantastic. There's a quote by B.J. Palmer, who is the developer of chiropractic. It says, you don't know how the words you think, say, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. So if I'm going to kind of mesh that together with a little fueled by spite thing, with a little philanthropy, if those words that I think, say, or do today are kind of self-serving, which again, admittedly they are, but they positively affect the lives of millions tomorrow, I think that's going to be all right, because I can adjust 300 people a week in my office, but if I can teach 300 chiropractors how to adjust 300 people a week in their offices, and not only that, but those chiropractors get to go home and love the life that they have at home also, that's a pretty cool reach, even if it came from a little bit of a place of narcissism.
But that's the potential, isn't it? So that's where
right.
that's where the potential comes from. And that is a lot of wisdom for all those Jennifer chiropractors and Henry chiropractors out there. So tell us where can we find out more about you then from this point onwards?
Well, if you want the chiropractic standpoint, like I said, I run an office called Aspire Chiropractic. It's a city called North Richland Hills, just outside of Dallas, Fort Worth. At Aspire Chiro DFW on all the different socials, on Twitter, on TikTok, on YouTube. I put a whole bunch on Instagram. Dude, Instagram is my social media of choice. Also, I think I'm very funny, so there's some funny stuff on there too. I don't know if you'll find it funny. I put it out there for me. If it entertains you, that's fantastic. Podcast side of things, at Spiteful Success, same thing. That's across all the socials. Then you can catch all the episodes we put on there, whether they're my solo ones or the people we interview. Primarily, we kind of keep it DFW and local, but there's a couple people beyond our borders that are on there also.
So we'll look out for all your one-liners and the comedy shows. Well, thank you for joining us, James. You've been fantastic, and I have really enjoyed this chat. And for you guys listening, be sure to check out James online and his podcast. Make sure you leave a comment on this episode about your thoughts on our conversation. I'll put all the links to James's places in the show notes as well. And don't forget to subscribe here to MAMWAA for more episodes before you leave. So until next time, stay healthy, keep moving, and move past those naysayers. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.